Okay, let's get started. Welcome. My name is Julia Gerson. I'm the product manager at MAXQDA, and in this session, I am going to take you on a tour of the reports and exports feature of MAXQDA. And there's a lot of features. I wasn't really aware how many different export options there are before I prepared this session. I will have time at the end to take a closer look at a few of them, but my goal today is really just to take you on a tour, and afterwards you'll know exactly which kind of data you can export in MAXQDA, and then which type of files you can export the data into. And let's get started with the question, why would you export the data? I mean, you have everything that you need in MAXQDA to import, to code, to annotate, to retrieve, ask questions of your data. You can pull up tables, visual tools. But of course, all of these things need to, at some point, make their way into a report, a presentation. Maybe you have a thesis that you need to hand in. You have an appendix that where just specific kind of data has to go there, or you're at the end of a publicly funded research project and you have to archive the data in the repository for secondary analysis. So there's different goals as to why you need to export data from MAXQDA. And good thing there's probably an export for every need that you can think of. So the export that I want to show you today are going to basically follow this itinerary. First, I want to talk about a bit in general the export options that you find everywhere, like kind of like global export options or icons that you will find in multiple places that will always do kind of the same thing. Then we'll have a look at how to export documents. So just the data with codes, the data as raw data. Then I am going to focus on codes. Which options do you have to export codes, code system, code definitions, move code system from one project to another. Then the coded segments. Here a highlight is the Smart Publisher, where after you've coded your data, how do you pull together a report, a list, a table of the coded data? And then we'll go into more of the different types of elements like the variables, the memos, maps, QTT workshops. And of course, teamwork is also interesting because you can MAXQDA, you can export elements from one project and import it into another project with the teamwork options. And then at the very end, how do you export the complete project when you're done with your data and when you have to archive everything in one place? Okay, so now you know what's coming up. Let's get started with the general export options. And I want to start by just pointing out something very, very simple, but that often people ask when they reach the support, like, I want to quote something from my data. In this screenshot here, you can see a part of the document browser. There's a part of an interview. And now you have something here and you want to quote it in your report or in your chapter. And what you can do is you can just right click on it and say copy. And it's not logged in. It's just an interface. So everything that you see, you can copy and paste it somewhere else. Up here in the context menu with the copy option. But then MAXQDA can do something interesting is when you paste it somewhere else. In this example, I've just pasted it into a Word document. It says the source information at the bottom. So you have the quote that you wanted to export, and then you have the name of the document and the position. So it's from paragraph 9. This is behavior that is probably a desired behavior, but if you do not want this because you want to keep your data anonymized or you're just not interested in this part of the information, there's an option in the document system where you can deselect the copy text segment with source information option, and then it won't have the source information up there. So this is just something very, very basic. If you right click on something, you'll probably see a copy option. So just try it out if you think that you might want to copy something somewhere. Then in almost, like, these are the export options you can look for in any window. As an example, here's the retrieve segments window, but really these icons, you can find them pretty much everywhere. It's the printer symbol, which will open up your print dialog and print whatever interface you are clicking this icon from. And then you have the blue W, which is the Word document option. This icon will export your data into a Word document. Next to it is the Excel table. Same thing, will open an Excel table. But as you can imagine, exporting the same data to Word or to Excel will produce pretty different results. But if you're not sure which one to use, just do both and then see which one look better and is better for your specific purpose. And then on the fourth one, the little square with the red arrow, that's the export icon. And if you click that icon, in most cases, you will open up an additional dialog with specific export options for the interface from which you have clicked this export option. So we'll look at some examples later, but just these are the icons to look for. When you see them, click on them, it will export the data from that window into another format. And there's a fifth one, a special one that you will see in Visual Tools, which is the little camera icon. It will probably not be very useful 1 or 2 generations down, because nobody will remember what this camera icon is for. But what it does is it saves the image to clipboard, and then you can just paste it into a PowerPoint presentation or something else. So these are just the general export options. Pretty much everywhere you go, you will have a variety of these icons available, and you can click on them and then export what you're looking at into one of these formats. But let's start the tour of the windows of the MAXQDA interface by looking at all of the different windows and how to export the data that you can find there. I'm going to start with the documents. The document system, of course, is at the top. It includes all of the data that you have imported, and you can export it in different ways. The first thing you want to maybe do is export a document that you have in MAXQDA. You have an interview, and now you want to have this interview as a document. What you do is you open it in the document browser. You click on the export icon that I just explained to you, and the export documents dialog opens up. And now you see, okay, there's a lot of checkboxes. You can select which file format you want to choose. And I have exported all of them for you, and we can look at the differences so you don't have to try it out for each one of them. Let's start with something simple. I'm in the document browser. I have the interview. I say, please export this as a text document. And I have 2 options checked: display the timestamps and include my memo content. If I do that, it will create a Word document that looks like this. I have all of the quotes on the right. I have the timestamps on top. It's in the brackets. If I deselect that, the icon in the export, it won't be there. And you can see if there is a memo in the document, the memo content is pasted with a yellow background into the document. So using this export, you can create a document that has some of the information from your document browser in the document. There's a checkbox right on the text document that says as table with paragraph line numbers. If I had checked that box, the result would look like this. So now each paragraph has its own row in a table. Maybe this is something that's better for you. And of course, you have all the paragraph and the line numbering, which might make it easier if it's an appendix and you have quoted from the interview for your the person who's checking the thesis to find the original source in the documents. So that's what that checkbox does. Now, if I click, if I open up the export as text document option and I would choose PDF instead, more of the checkboxes become active. Now, as you can see on the right, I can even include the coding stripes. So this is just a really easy way to make your work visible and transparent to someone who doesn't know MAXQDA. Of course, you can always tell them that there's the MAXQDA Reader, which is a tool that allows everyone to open MAXQDA project and just browse through them. But if someone's reading a thesis, they do not want to have the reader, like they cannot have the software in the appendix. But this one, you can print them out, or save them as a PDF, add them to the end of your thesis, and now everybody knows exactly where you've coded what in your interviews and can read all of the interviews as an original if that's what you desire to do. So those were the export options that you can have if you click on the export icon. Next to the export icon here is a print icon, but that will open up something very similar. But here now, under more settings in the lower corner, you can also say how wide should the column with the coding stripes be. So you can just have even more settings to really create a PDF or a printed out document exactly how you want it to be. But then maybe you're not looking to export just one document. Maybe you want to export all of your documents at once. This is something you can also do. You can go to the reports menu in MAXQDA. You can click on export. You see lots of options. And then you just select the all documents option. And it will create a folder with all of your document groups, like Berlin and Hamburg, and all of your documents, just as simple text documents. So this is also an easy and quick option to just get everything, all of your data out of MAXQDA at once. That's for the documents. Let's move on to the code system. The code system here on the lower left is where you have all of your categories. You've probably put a lot of work into refining them, and now you want to share all of these thoughts and these results. I mean, the category system is something you've worked on. You want to share this with somebody. How do you do it? You can just right-click on the code system option, or you can go to reports and say export code system, but it's quicker to just right-click on the code system. You will see a context menu that has one option that says export code system. A new window opens up that shows you all of the available options that you can export your code system into. And again, I've taken a look at them, so you don't have to try them all out yourself. Starting at the top, if you export your code system into a Word or text document, what you get is a Word document with a table in it that has your code system. So on the left, you have wishes for the future, and then you have the subcode of wishes for the future, then you have work-life balance, and so on. And next to it, you have the memos for the codes, and then you have the frequencies. So you've exported your code system from the interface MAXQDA into a table. If you choose one of the Excel files or the HTML, you get something pretty similar. It looks a little different. Now you have each of the code system, the categories in table cells and Excel table. You have, again, the frequencies. You do not have the code memos, but again, it's a good overview of your code system that you can just print, copy everywhere. There's also text delimited. If this is the format that you need for some reason, you can export it this way and then use it in a different tool. But then we have three options that are quite interesting down here, because before we've just created files that you can open and read. But then we have the MAXQDA code system file. What this does, it creates an MTR file, which is kind of like an exchange file, which exports the code system as it is into a file. And then I can go into a different MAXQDA project that has codes or doesn't have code, go to import code system, select the file I just created, and it will create a duplicate of the complete code system, but without codes. So this is a way, if you're reusing a code system in a new project with new data, you don't have to duplicate the project and then delete the coded segments. You can just say, okay, this is the structure I want to use, export the code system, and import it into another project. Then we have kind of similar, but a little different, the REFI-ODA codebook, which is follows the same principle, but in this case, you can export the codebook, the code system, and then import it into a different QDA tool, as long as that QDA tool also supports this universal codebook exchange format. They have a website if you want to learn more about this, this project. And then last but not least, we have the image. Maybe you have a poster and you want to have just a big picture of your whole code system. You can go to the export, say PNG image file, and it will create a complete picture of the complete code system, which is hard to create on your own with screenshots because it's hard to get it all on screen at once if it's a really large code system. So those are the way Sorry. So those are the options that you have to export your code system from the code system window. But then for the codes, there's also a very special export called the code book. You can find the code book up in the reports menu here on the second from the left. And what the code book does is that it lists all or selected codes in the order of your code system, but with the associated code memo. So it's really useful to use it for as a code book for your code definitions. Here's an example of what it looks like. It creates a Word document that's layouted. It has a report with a title page, code book, the name of the project. Then it has the code system as a list or as a table of content. And then you have for each of the codes, you have the code definition. So this is just a really useful tool if you have to explain your categories to somebody, because it's a very easy readable export list. And there's lots of options. If you click on it, you could say you only want to include codes that have code memos. You can only include your top level codes, select limited to activated codes, select the font. So you see there's lots of options to really make this code book fit it exactly your needs and to include it in your reports. Then for codes, you also have the overview of codes. I'm just going to show you really quickly. This is a table that looks like this. On the left, you have a list of all of your codes. Then you have quantitative information, like how often was this code used? How much, like how large is the percentage area of the data that is covered with this code? How many documents is it in? When was it created? And so on. So you can also export a code list like this, like a code table that has additional information about the codes by using the overview of codes. The same is true with all of the other overviews. You can see them there, the overview of coded segments, the overview of links, of summaries. I'm not going to show you each of them. They all follow a similar scheme. And as you can see on the top right corner, there's the Excel icon, there's the export icon. So you can just export this to Excel as it is. So now we've covered documents, we've covered the codes and the code system. How about the coded work? So the coded segments, the data that's usually displayed in your retrieved segments window. Now, when you take a closer look at the retrieved segments window, you'll see that it also has the export icons that we all know by now. And let me show you again what all these different export options do when you click on them. If I click on the Word icon, I get a Word document like this. It has the name of the project, and it has the quotes. And then below it has information about the code, about the source information, and if I had it activated, my favorite variable values. So it's just a very simple Word document that just lists them. It doesn't have a table of content like some of the more specialized export options. Now, what if I click on the Excel icon instead of the Word icon? It's the same data, but it's differently presented. Now I have a table that has the code. I know where does it end, where does it start, what's the weight score. I have all of this additional information like when was this coded, how much area of the document does it cover, and so on. So similar information, but now completely different output. Now, if I click on the export icon next to the Word and the Excel icon, I get more options to choose from even. As you can see here, you can now say if you export the coded data, which information do you want to include and which do you want to exclude? So you can just check or uncheck the boxes. Say you don't want the comments, you don't want the memo, you don't want the position, and so on. And the result is that when you export it, for example, to Word, at the bottom of each of the segments, you will see more or less information depending on what you selected here in this export menu. So that's the export of the coded segments directly from the directly from the retrieved segments window. But there's a specialized tool, which is called the Smart Publisher. And the Smart Publisher was created to fulfill the needs of those that have to just report about specific topics all the time. So let's say you're a marketing company and you just have to create a report every month about new comments that came in with comments about the product that you're selling. Now the Smart Publisher can create a Word document that's formatted with a title page, header, and so on about specific topics. So when you click on it, you'll first have to decide which topics are you interested in. For the codes, I'm interested in wishes for the future, work-life balance. I'm not interested in all of the other topics, but I could be. No? Then you can limit it to activated documents, as you can pretty much everywhere. And then when I click OK, I can select how the information will be presented about the codes that are already selected. As you can see, I can choose my own title. I can choose my own subtitle. I can even add image files. So you can add your own branding. You can add your company logo and so on. I have a header, like here, March 2022. And I have a footer. And then there's options below. I can filter it by specific weights. I know you can, with weights in MAXDAY, you could tell MAXDAY which you can assign a weight between 0 and 100 to any segment. And if you used it to say, okay, everything above 75 is really important, I want to include in my reports, you could use this here to say only include coded segments that have a weight 75 or higher. And you can say, how do you want the coded segments to be ordered once they're in the Word document, which source information to include, but it becomes clearer if we look at the result that comes from this export. So this would be the quarterly report I just created. It has my image up there. It has a table of content that starts by listing all of the data that I have included, and then it follows with the table of content where each of my codes is the chapter and each of the subcodes is the subchapter. And then for each chapter, all of the coded segments are listed. So if I just wanted to pull together really quickly, okay, what are all of the positive quotes we got for this product last month? I could use this report. I can even modify the template that MAXDAY uses so that it already uses the font that I'm using in my company. I have my report, I can hand it in, and here are all the quotes, all the relevant quotes for this topic for March 2022. So that's what the Smart Publisher can be used for. And that was my conclusion for the coded segments. So this is another way to export the coded segments. Now let's move on to the next area, which is the variables. If you're working with variables in MAXQDA, then you know that you can attach quantitative information to your documents. Like say you had interviews, but you also had you asked them questions like their age, location, occupation, and so on. You have all of those stored in document variables, or maybe you have code variables, or if you have focus groups, you have speaker variables. All of these can be exported by just clicking on the export icons in the variables menu, and then you have Excel, SPSS, docx, RTF, and HTML as the option, and it just creates a table as you would know with all of the variables, all of the documents, and all of their variable values. Then in the reports menu, you'll also find something called summaries. Summaries in MAXQDA is when you take all of the coded data and then you summarize it into your own words. Those can be exported here in two special ways, just the summaries or summaries with coded segments. If you click on it, again, you have options that you can limit it to activated documents or codes, standardize the text formatting, include comments or not. And if you choose the upper option, the summaries, you get a table that has your codes and your summaries. If you say you want to include the coded segments, it's the same data, but now it also includes the complete coded segments that you have. So this way you can create Word documents that have your summaries and or not the coded segments together. Then on the right of the summaries is the project information. If you click on this, it just opens another little window with some meta information about your project, like how many documents, how many codes, coded segments, focus group. I mean, you can read it here. It's just a lot of quantitative meta information about your project. And if you haven't created a project memo, it has the project memo text here at the top. And then we have another specialized report here in the reports menu, which is the document profile. It's actually a new feature from MAXQDA 2022. If I click on this icon, I can select if I want to limit my documents or if I want to limit my codes to just activated elements. And I can select favorite variables to display. Now you're wondering, why am I doing this? What's going to happen if I click on OK? What it does, it creates a table that has information about your documents in each line. So each line is one document. I have Tan, Matteo, Selim, and so on. In the beginning, you have the information, like which document group and document name do you have. This is followed by the document memo. So if you use the memos to write down additional information about your documents, you have that information right here in the table. And then you have the variables, the favorite variables that you wanted to include. So here I have the civil status, number of children these interviews have, their age, their location, and employment status. And then it's followed by the codes. See at the top, I could limit it to activated codes. I can say which codes I'm interested in. And then those codes and those code frequencies are listed for each of the documents. So it's a really nice way to just get an overview with background information about each of my documents. And then here's another specialized export. It's called Archive Data. And this one is found on the Home tab, not on the Reports tab. And the Archive Data exports your project data just in a clear and simple to understand folder or a zip folder. And it includes the data in its original format. So it's raw data that you can then send to a repository for secondary analysis, or just archive it somewhere safe in your institution or on your personal hard drive. As you can see, you can choose which data to include: statistical data, media, metadata and memos, themes. You can limit it again to activate documents, and you can compress it as a zip file if you want to. And the result is an overview of your data. You have your documents, you have your document groups, they all contain the data. You have in the media data just the files, and then you have the variables and the codes as the themes in an Excel file. So this is a way to archive your data in a way that it can be used for all kinds of purposes. It doesn't really follow the MAXQDA wording of the names anymore. So it's just really a universal way to export and archive all of your data as once. Okay, now we have a few more special export options to look at. For example, the memos. If you're writing memos, you can find the export option up on the right corner of the memo. Again, you have this a dialog opened up with multiple options. If you choose a text document, it creates just a docx document like this with the name of the memo, information when it was created, the content of the memo, and if you checked all of the boxes, all of the linked elements like the linked codes and the linked coded segments. The same option is available from the Memo Manager window, which is the workspace where you have all of the memos at once. And sometimes you maybe have 4 memos at once in the right side, or you have 18 memos here on the left side. If you click on the export icon here, you can choose if you want to export all of the memos, just the memos currently on the right, or just the memos currently on the left. But the result is the same as when you export one memo with the doc that I just showed you, but now you have multiple memos all at once. Then we have MAXMaps, which is the mapping tool where you can create your own maps and networks. If you don't know it yet, you can check it out, but this is a tool that needs a whole nother spotlight session because it's so there's so many things that you can do with it. But again, it has an export map icon here on the top right corner. And if I click on it, I can select which file format to export it to. I have PNG, JPEG, but then I also have a scalable vector file that I can just blow really big for posters and so on. You can choose if you want to have a background color or not and export it. Or here, the fourth one, the mod file, you can also export it in a way that you can then import it into another MAXDAY project, similar to the code system. So this is a MAXMaps exchange file down here. An export options for some visual tools. Some visual tools you can actually export to MAXMaps. So here, for example, I have a document map where I have analyzed how similar documents are, and I have found that I have 3 groups of my documents, and now I want to save them as a MAXMaps. you can click on export and save as MAXMaps in MAXMaps, and it will just transform the visualization into a map. Similar but a little different is the send to QTT worksheet, because if you do choose that option, you can send this visual tool to a QTT worksheet where you collect all of your analytical findings. And the same option is found also when you right-click on, for example, coded segments. You can also export that from the MAXQDA interface and import it, just send it to a QTT workspace. Here, also in the document portrait. If you're working with QTT, there's also an export options for your QTT worksheets. When you do that, you have a nice report with all of the sections as the chapters and all of the content of each section in the Word document. If you don't know the QTT, just take a look at it later or take a look at the recording of the session that I taught on QTT early on. Also a really nice tool. But as you can see here, it also produces a really nice export. And now I have only 3 more exports to show you before we are at the end of the presentation, at least. The first one is the teamwork export. Because in MAXQDA on the home tab, there's a teamwork option. If you open it, you'll find something called export teamwork, export data to Exchange file. What it does is it lets you pull elements from your MAXQDA project into a file that can then be imported into another MAXQDA project. So what happens is that first the Select Documents dialog opens up where I've selected my Berlin documents. And then the Select Code dialog opens up where I've selected my work situation codes. If I clicked OK, it would create a special file, a MAXQDA Exchange file, that can then be imported into another project with the same option up here in the Home tab under Teamwork, Import Teamwork. And then you can save a complete copy of your project. There are a few options available here. One of them, really interesting, is the Save Anonymized Copy option. Because let's say you have interviews, and in your interviews mention their occupation, the names, the places where they live. So what you can do is you can code those instances in your data with a code named places or names or occupation. And then when you choose this option up here, this would be like if someone mentions Hamburg, mostly it's close to Hamburg main station, just code it with the code name places. And then when you click the Save Anonymized Project and then say places should be anonymized, the result will look like this. In the copy of the project that's saved, instead of Hamburg, it will just say XXXXXXX. So that's one way to save a complete copy of your project. Right here. Because of places, it says XXX here. Or you can just export the complete project. Just duplicate your project from within MAXQDA. Just say Save Project As. You can select a new name, select where to save your document to, and create a copy of it. And a special option here is that you can also choose to export it as a MAXQDA 2020 project. So if you're working with colleagues or with students or just anybody who does not work with the newest version of MAXQDA, you can save your project and downgrade it to MAXQDA 2020. Of course, all of the features that are new and not available, they won't be there, and maybe some of the data will then be missing, but they can open the data, they can work with it, and they can look at what you've done. There's also, again, the REFI-ODA project, which is, again, the universal exchange format where you can exchange projects with any other QDA tool that also supports this format. But if you choose the MAXQDA 2022 project file, you will create a complete copy of your project with the file ending MX22, and then you have exported everything from your project into one file. Okay. Thank you. I was a little bit longer than I intended, but there's just a testament to how many export options there are in MAXQDA. So let me share a different screen now, because I want to go, I want to go into MAXQDA and see if there are any questions that we can take a look at them together in MAXQDA. Okay, let me go to Q&A. What's the meaning of the weight? Yeah, sorry, I kind of, the weight in MAXQDA is for each coded segment. So here you have the coded segments. If I code something, apply a code to it, this is now a coded segment. And what I can do for each of them is I can set a weight. So I can modify the weight of the segment. At the moment it's 100, but I could say it's 75, for example. Now this coded segment has a weight of 75. If I hover over it, you can see it in the tooltip. You can use this to filter your results, your coded segments in many places. You can filter it right here. If you have retrieved segments up here, you can use the weight filter and say only show me those segments that are 70 or higher. It will go to 0 because I don't have any weights used here. But this is how you use the weight filter. You use it to modify singular coded segments and on a scale to maybe tell yourself how good or how relevant they are to your purpose. And then in some of the exports, you can say to only export coded segments with a specific weight. So you can use it for yourself as a filter. Okay. And then here's another question about the Anonymized project. Does this work on image files? If I code name over a document image? Oh yeah, I've never tried this. No, I don't think it works because it works on the text basis. But interesting. I'm gonna write this down as an idea. Because it goes into the text, and every time that something is coded, it replaces the text with XXX at the moment. Do you need to assign the weight for each code in advance? You can set a default weight. Where do you do it? To do it down here. Here. You can put a default weight in here. So if my default weight is 50, and then if I now create a new code, it automatically has a weight of 50 because that's now the default weight that I created. So you can do that if you say, okay, my default weight is 50, and then all of my really good quotes, I'm going to weigh in at 75, and then really bad quotes, I'm going to weigh in a little bit lower. So that's a way that you can use the weight if you want to. Okay. Well, I think I have answered all of the questions. I mean, you also have the handout. It's a really long handout, but it lists all of these options again in a way with screenshot that you can take a look later. There's so many options that it's just hard to remember which export does which, but just don't be afraid to just click on it. Like, it doesn't hurt the data. When you export them, it doesn't change anything about the data, so you can just try it out while trial and error until you reach the desired export. And as you can see, there's so many options. You can really set each export to be exactly what you need it to be. Okay, then I want to say thank you for your visit in this session. I hope you have fun working with MAXQDA, and I hope you're successful exporting your data from now on. And have a great time at the rest of the conference. Bye-bye.